Good morning, students of Class 12. It is a video of Deep Water, that is the third chapter from the book Flamingo. The author's name is William or Willie Douglas. Really, you must be interested in knowing about the author's description that I must tell you. And what is the significance of deep water? Here, the deep water is a relation describing about the autobiographical event of the author William O. Douglas. This is so inspiring, it is so adventurous, and how a problem comes in one's life and how it can be overcome, that every child requires to know. It is a lesson that tells how our courage, determination, and that very sincerity towards knowing a certain thing that lacks us, that really frightens us, and how it can be overcome, that everyone must know. It is the idea that the author likes to inject in this revelation. He is an American author, but he remained the judge for the longest period in the history of the jurisprudence, and he is one of the judges who just remained as judge for 36 years in his career, which is the longest service as a judge in the legal career. He is the author William O. Douglas, who was born in 1898 in Maine, Minnesota. After graduating with a Bachelor's of Arts in English in Economics, he spent 2 years teaching high school in Yakima. Really, he was a graduate in English and Economics. He got tired of this very teaching job and decided to pursue as a legal career. So he met Franklin D. Roosevelt at Yale, who was the president then of America, and he became an advisor and friend to the President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was a leading advocate of individual rights. He retired in 1975 with a term lasting 36 years and remains the longest service justice in the history of the court. This is an excerpt taken from the book of Men and Mountains written by William O. Douglas. Of Men and Mountains by William O. Douglas. It reveals how a young boy, William Douglas, nearly drowned in a swimming pool, and he how overcame this very problem that you will learn. This story has been taken from the author's autobiography that you have learned. In this, he tells how he conquered the fear of water by his own will and determination. As a child, when he was only 3 or 4 years old, he would go to the beach in California with his father. He would get scared by the might of the huge waves were swept over him, and it instilled a fear in his subconscious mind as the waves were coming and rolling over him, and he was afraid and crying, save me," but father was laughing. He was so much scared that he could not forget that very scene, and a few years later, in his eagerness to learn swimming, he joined a swimming pool where an incident further increased his terror. Why? because he was pushed into the pool by another boy when he was waiting for the instructor to come. He was all alone by the side of the pool, and a bruiser, a very strong boy of 18, came and tossed him into the air, and he just fell into deep water. Actually, it was 9 feet deep on the other end, but it was safer than other rivers. Many years after that incident, he stayed away from water, but the desire to go fishing and swimming in nature was strong enough to motivate him to overcome his fear. How he could do all these things, that was a problem. He learned swimming with the help of an instructor who ensured that William knew swimming well enough to be able to swim in huge lakes and waterfalls also. Still, when he would swim, the fear from his childhood experiences embedded in his subconscious mind that gripped him over and over again. He wanted to conquer that fear that really made him feel so embarrassed. He faced it sarcastically, thinking that now, as he knew how to swim, what harm could it do to him? He challenged his fear in the face of it, and finally it would vanish. And it did vanish. It was a baseless fear instilled in his subconscious mind. This experience was valuable for him. He had experienced terror and death. He overcame it and finally conquered it. William realized that death is peaceful, and it is the fear of death that is so terrorizing. His will to survive and live life grew intensely as he had overcome his fear and started living fearlessly. It was the idea that he wanted, and he was successful in this. When William Douglas was 10 or 11 years old, something did happen, and there was a pool at the YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association in Yakima, that offered exactly the opportunity. The Yakima River was treacherous. It was so deceptive. Mother warned him, and she told all the events that really made the river so treacherous. So she told him that YMCA pool was quite safe. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, while it was 9 feet at the deep end. The drop was gradual. He got a pair of water wings and went to the pool. He hated to walk or swim naked into water, and he did not like to show his skinny legs. But he subdued his pride and did it. From the very beginning, he had a hatred dislike for water. And when he was 3 or 4 years old, his father took him to the beach in California, and he was staying there in the surf, and he hung on to him. The waves knocked him and swept over him. He was buried in water. His breath was gone. He thought that he would die. He started crying, and this terror continued in his heart, and it did not go. So he wanted to just get rid of this, and he just came to YMCA pool, where he wanted to just take training of learning how to swim. When he was just trying, at the time he paddled with his new water wings, watching the other boys and trying to learn by aping them, imitating them. He did this 2 or 3 times on different days, and really he was able to ease his terror, but something happened so misadventurous. What was that misadventure that I told you that there was a big bruiser of a boy and he was probably 18 years old. He came and he threw him into water who was waiting for others to come, and he was a beautiful specimen of man. So his legs, arms were having rippling muscles. And so he just ducked him, he threw him into water. What did happen? He was frightened and found himself at the bottom. He became very panicked. He was suffocating. He tried to cry. He had lost his breath and went down endlessly. His heart was pounding. He was feeling paralyzed and he wanted to come out of it, but it was in vain. He had a plan. Did he plan? He planned to just go down at the bottom and then spring up like a cork, but he found that the water was dirty, and it was so dirty, it was yellow of color. He thought that when he would come up, he would grab a rope and his hands would clutch only water. He was suffocating. He had no sense to come out. His mouth was filled with water. He tried to flail. He swallowed water and choked. He tried to bring his legs up, but they hang as did weights. They were paralyzed and rigid. He could not come up. He did this twice. He went down, coming up, and it was like nightmare. It was irresistible for him. This very fear was irresistible. Only he felt that his lungs were aching, his head was throbbing, he was feeling dizzy, and he remembered that what a strategy he had to follow, and again he went down at the bottom. And then again he came up, and then he realized that he was not having sense. He did not have enough energy to move his legs and arms, and his eyes became closed, and his mind started churning, and thought that he was only on the mercy of the God, and he thought that he would die. There was a stark terror system, terror that knew no understanding, terror that knew no control, terror that no one could understand. Who has not experienced such a terror, a striking terror? And his screams in his throat were frozen. He was unable to speak. His heart had choked. His only head was pounding that said that he was still alive. Then what did happen? Amidst this very terror, he had a touch of reason. Then he just remembered that when he would go at the bottom, he would hit. But there was no difference at all. He could not find ropes, ladders, water wings, but everything was just an imagination. So a stark terror took even deeper hold on him, and like a charge of electricity, he shook and trembled with fright. His arms could not move. He tried to call his mother. He tried to call someone, but nothing did happen. He was just lying on the surface of the water. After which, after some time, he found himself by the side of the pool where someone was telling that he was almost dead, but he found himself that he was retching, means vomiting, and then only that very bruiser who had thrown him into water came and said that he was just joking. He was trying to befool him, but it really did happen something wrong. And then he came back. And when he came back home, he could not eat that very night, and he was really so much frightened of the water that was unbelievable, and he never got that very thing. So what did happen? His all these efforts had really told something to him. A few years later, when he came to know the waters of the cascades, then he decided that he would hire a trainer, and he really tried. Whenever he went on just catching fish, he went for yachting, boating, and every kind of activities in the water. He was afraid that he would drown, but it was not. So he just hired an instructor that put a belt around him. Instructor put a belt around him. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley. Pulley was just hanging up, and that ran on an overhead cable. He held on to the end of the rope, and they went back and forth across the pool after hour, after day, and week after week. This very practice was practiced. On each trip across the pool, a bit of the panic seized him. He realized that he was feeling afraid. Every time the instructor was a big support to him, and he just relaxed the rope, and the terror when came it froze his legs. It was 3 months. The 3 months were taken, and before the tension began to reduce, then it taught me, means the instructor taught William Douglas to put his face under water and exhale, breathe out. Then what did happen? He raised his nose and inhaled. He repeated the exercise hundreds of times, and slowly he said part of the panic and seized him when his head went under water. After this, what did happen to him? Next, he held him at the side of the pool and had him kick with his legs. For weeks, he just did that. In April, he was able to perfect himself in swimming, and now the instructor told that he could swim, dive off, and swim the length of the pool, crawl a stroke, and then he did. The work of the instructor was over. But William Douglas was not finished. He was still terror-stricken when he was all alone in the water pool, and so he just thought that this is a terror that he feels. Whenever he went into water, he was not satisfied with his own performance, and really it was a terror that came. So he went to Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stampede Island. He swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke, and back stroke. What are the strokes? Crawl stroke, breaststroke, and side stroke and back stroke. Only once did the terror return when he was in the middle of the lake. He put his face under water and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation came back to him in a small. He laughed and said, well, Mr. Taylor, what do you think? What do you think you can do to me?" Then the terror fled away and he was just swimming on. So, yet he had some residual doubts. What were the doubts that he felt? There were some doubts, and he just wanted to keep it finished. So he went up the Titan to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Midi Glacier. Listen to me again. Up the Conrad Creek means river trail to Midi Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of Warm Lake, where he camped and just completed. The next morning, he stripped, took off his clothes. He just put on the swimming suit and then went in. Then, and as he swam across, he dived into the lake and swam on the other shore to the other shore, just as Doc Carpon used to do. He was a famous swimmer. Doc Carpon, Dougcorpron, Doc Carpon. Here, that he did. And here that he continued swimming and became a famous swimmer, and then he had a great experience. When he had done, he shouted when he came to the Gilbert Peak. Then he came. When he shouted, that sound echoed from the Gilbert Peak and said, "I had conquered my fear of water." William Douglas felt ecstatic when he announced that he had conquered his fear of water, and it was really done by him. So now I must tell you that it is the terror only in the fear of death. Roosevelt said this: "All we have to fear is fear itself." Because he had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew in intensity. So he had a great experience. As a young man, he just went to several lakes and rivers and swimming pools where as a young man he could swim and his fear was over. So it is the story that finally he was able to conquer his fear of water. He was able to swim in the icy cold water, but he had no fear, and he was able to announce that he was a great swimmer. Now he was not afraid of water. Means hydrophobia was gone. There are some difficult words. YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association. Yakima, it is a place in Washington, America. Treacherous, dangerous or deceptive. Drops slow from the shallow area to the deep area. Water wings, a pair of inflatable waterproof bags designed so that one can be attached to each arm, especially of a child learning to swim. Skinny means thin, subdued means to overcome or pacify. Just here, pride. Pride means self-respect. Aversion, dislike, surf, wave of the sea. Knocked me down, threw him down, divide, brought back to mind, to feel at ease, to feel comfortable. Bruiser, a person who is tough and aggressive and enjoys a fight or argument. Strong man, a specimen example, someone gathered or called. A spring, push, bob, jump. suffocating, unable to breathe due to lack of air, yell, scream, a skinny, a thin person, ducked, push or plunge someone underwater, expanding, losing or giving out, ached means pain, throbbed, felt pain in a series of beats, dizzy, faint, unsteady, strategy, plan of action, strike out, extend, thrash, hit with force. Stark, severe, seized, gripped, shrieking, screaming, paralyzed, incapable of movement, pounding, repeated beating, oblivion, the state of being unaware or unconscious of what is happening around you. Curtain of life fell, life came to an end. Thank you, children. In this way, I have told you all about this relation which can enable you to write all the question answers and all the aspects of this lesson. Thank you, children.